Here we are for another very fun, exciting episode of the Six Star Business Podcast. Pete, I am super excited. We have a multi-continent episode today. We've got Paul, Ace, and Jason Ho. Hey guys, how you going?
Fantastic.
Yeah, good, man. Fantastic. Thank you.
Awesome. To get us started, we always ask our guests some very difficult questions, and this is for the benefit of our listeners. And if you could answer these questions not at the same time, hopefully one after the other, just tell us who you are, where you are in the world, and who you serve in the world, what you do, and perhaps something you like to do outside of work in your spare time.
So, yeah, my name's, everyone knows me as Paul Ace. I actually used to be a wedding singer and then got into online marketing. I'm based in the UK, and we help seven-figure high-ticket course creators go from dropping ROAS, burnout, trying to break through that glass ceiling, all the way to making an extra 6 or 7 figures in new revenue in their business, and sometimes 6 figures extra every single month.
And what about outside of work?
Outside of work? Yeah, outside of work, I love badminton. I love competing at anything, even if it's tiddlywinks or hungry hippos, I'd be there. I just like competition and beating people at stuff in a really nice and friendly way. I was disappointed that I didn't win the award for the most competitive in our badminton club.
Great. Got some stuff to explore there.
Yeah. So my name is Jason Ho. I'm based in Singapore. What I do is I help MNC leaders, directors, GMs, C-level. I help them to really create a tribe that is highly caring and also highly performing. So that's what I usually do. We do a lot of, and also in terms of workshops as well. So I help them to up their game in leadership. A lot of times people are great in terms of individual contributors, but when it comes to leadership, they have really low levels of development. So I help them we help. So in my spare time, I have 5 kids. I have 5 children. And in my spare time, I roam around Singapore trying to find the best playgrounds for the kids. And that's my Saturdays and Sundays.
I thought you were going to say I spend my spare time roaming around Singapore trying to find my kids. That's
in the shopping malls, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, it's wonderful. Welcome, the pair of you. It's great to have you. The other question we like to ask to start at the outset, it's kind of really a sense of just sort of pushing the roller coaster, if you like, off the top, is our guests come on the show because there is some resonance, some level with the concept, the notion of 6-star business, and for different people it means different things. That's one of the things we found out about it, is that 6-star business is like this placeholder, if you like, for a lot of stuff. So, Jason, when you first came across the 6-Star Business Podcast, I think you reached out to us, didn't you, through the Matchmaker website? What was it about this particular podcast that made you want to use up one of your contact requests to reach out, and has kind of held your interest long enough to come on the show?
Yeah, actually, ever since young, I've always been wondering how to reach success the fastest. So you see me in the bookshops, always about self-help, gone to different courses, almost every course you can think about. So whenever it comes to success and world-class excellence, it's something it resonates with me a lot. So whenever it comes to this idea of 5-star, how do we push that boundary of 5-star into a 6-star? That really resonates with me, because when we think about this, when we are excellent, one of the things about us being excellent is that we naturally use the strengths that we have to reach that level of excellence. So very successful people will always be the ones that really enjoy what they do. And that's where we like to push that boundary of excellence. And that's why I think 6-star is somebody I reach out to, and you guys is somebody I reach out to.
Cool.
Nice.
Paul, before I ask you the same question, Jason, and I'll edit this out obviously, would you just move your microphone slightly, because your S sounds are coming through as popping? So just want to, yeah, that should be great. So, Paul, what about you? What attracted your interest about the 6-star business concept?
Yeah, I mean, we have a massive focus on customer wow, and we understand that, like, especially when we're working for 7-figure businesses, you can't just focus on the numbers or the marketing. It's also about, like, how do you make people feel throughout the whole customer journey, and are you bringing people closer towards you or further away? And I think that's been even more important, right, in the last 12, 18 months, where people want this human connection. And when you can do that through customer wow, it's really powerful. So something we added in recently into our daily huddles. So on a Friday, every Friday, we do a customer wow section. So every single person on the team has to come to that call and have I get my little timer wherever I've put it. I get my little timer, and then I put 1 minute on it, and I go, right, 1 minute customer wow, go. And they have to give me a customer wow idea for the team of how we're going to move the needle forward in the next 7. And then and they all look at it from different standpoints. So like one might be looking at it from a tech standpoint of how we can add an extra integration to make that experience better. I might look at it from a strategy perspective. Someone else maybe even from a design or a customer service perspective. So it's like seeing all those things come together. You're always moving the needle on customer wow, and then you get referred a lot more. So you don't have to spend anything on advertising when you create a 6-star experience.
Right. You say that you're a competitor, Paul, and you like to win. Well, I'd like to congratulate you and say that you are the winner of the award for the fastest gold nugget, the fastest takeaway. That concept about the Daily Huddle, and yeah, obvious, easy, simple, done by most businesses. I would say most certainly not.
No.
Yeah, and we also add in a sharpening of the saw section on a Friday as well. So everyone gets 1 minute to say what you're going to sharpen the saw on this week. So how are you going to move the needle for your own personal growth as well? So then you have the combination of those two every single Friday. And everyone, to start off with, they were really nervous about it, because when you've got maybe introverts and go, right, 1 minute, go. And they're like, ah! But now they're like, great, I've got it, because they're prepared. Because you put them in that pressurized container enough, then it comes out the other side.
Wow.
Jason, what's your take on customer wow?
Yeah, I think when it comes to customers, usually we want to be able to understand their expectation and go above that. And a lot of times we don't show all our cards at the start, and we always leave a few cards at the end. So, for example, when we do the coaching and all that, we want to be able to give them that support, and the amount of support that we give them is above their expectation. So we always leave some cards on the table that we don't show them, and that's a surprise for them. It's almost like a present on Christmas. So that's how we actually try to always hit that wow for each of the customers that we have.
Okay.
And what's go on, Paul?
Yeah, I think to add to that as well is it's also not just about the things, it's also about the process, right? So one of the things that we look at is with our onboarding process is how can I create that customer wow at every stage of the journey. We mentioned just before we started recording about the fact that we've got a podcast as well. One of the things that I look at is how can I make that person feel like they're a celebrity by the time they get onto the podcast? So like we have a five-day email drip sequence. It's like, here's all the things to expect. Here's the mics that you need. Here's the links to all those if you want to go and get them, so that maybe there's even leveraged affiliate income before they've even come on the show, but they feel good about it because it's not like selling to them. So by the time they get there, they're like, hey, everything was really organized. And then we have a lot of automations that we use to leverage that customer wow. So one of the things that when we started doing the podcast, I was like, okay, the podcast notes are taking ages. So it was taking me like 1 hour to do the research on every single person, even though they were filling in this onboarding form. So I was like, what can we do? So I wrote out a Google Doc of all the things that I needed to do from a housekeeping perspective and all the things I wanted to say afterwards as well to guide people along. And then we automated all the onboarding form that they'd filled in into that Google Doc. So then I have those notes already. So like housekeeping wise, I'm like bing, and they know exactly what's going on every time, and they get the same. Sometimes it's like McDonald's. It's the same customer experience. That's sometimes what people are looking for. It's like, if I turn up again, am I going to get the same thing as I did before? Or am I going to get a chicken burger, or am I going to get a beef burger this time?
Selfishly, I'd like to go through your guest experience on your podcast just so I can rip off and duplicate.
Hey, that's fine. I found a lot of inspiration from Josh Eldridge, Up My Influence. He had a great customer experience, and I was like, how can we automate more of it and take it even? So yeah, I think it's one of the biggest opportunities is if people feel like they know, like, and trust you before they get on your podcast, then you're much more likely to turn into collaboration after that. So one of the things we do is at the end of that call, it's like, hey, we're always looking at the ways we can collaborate, maybe even do business together. Are you open to having another conversation about that? Better word phrasing to use, in fact, is would you be against having another conversation about that? Because when you ask for a no, you get a lot more yeses.
Wow. And you asked that of every guest who comes on your podcast?
We have about 90% of people who come on the show do a follow-up call with us, and then we spend the first 15 minutes of that follow-up call all about them. I like, if I say anything about me, slap me around the face virtually. That's fine. And then the second 15 minutes, we talk about our business. So what ends up by the end of it, either I'm going to get like 3 more podcast guests, that would be great, or someone who's a great referral, and then I've introduced them to like 3 or 4 people, and then we become a hub. So that's what we use the podcast more as we become a hub and a connector for everyone, rather than, okay, we want to get as many downloads as possible and make this massive like influencer. I'm not an influencer. I'm more of a strategist behind the curtain. So how can you link those people together and create that 6-star experience?
That's genius. I can see Av's making notes there. We'll definitely be implementing some of that. I really appreciate that. For any listeners of this podcast that don't have a podcast of their own, though, Paul, what's the sort of generic thinking behind that particular approach which you've brought to your podcast? What can they take away?
Yeah, so here's one of the things that we did when we first... Before I did this podcast, I did another one, which was essentially just a Facebook Live show. I'd say the general premise of it is like, yeah, you don't need a full podcast, but hey, go and interview people. Like, go and find who your dream client is and interview them. Like, it doesn't need to be... If you create something that someone wants enough, you will get in touch with people that you never thought possible. Like, for example, yesterday I was interviewing Tom Ziegler, right? So these... like 7 and 8 figure businesses. We've got a guy coming on soon who helped Damon John scale up Fubu and stuff like that. He's like 8 figure plus. One cold email and we got him on the show because we relate to him personally rather than just going, let's go and send out mass stuff. So a couple of years back, I did something called Build My Bot Friday, where it was like, hey, if you come on the show, we'll build you a bot for free. You can take it away, use it in your business. We'll do half an hour talking strategy in business, and then the second half we'll build you that bot live on Facebook. So it was demonstrating my skills at the same time as they got a win and a takeaway from it, and that turned into me then working with John Lee Dumas, Screw the 9 to 5, Pete Vargas, Ray Higdon, all those kind of people, and getting paid to work with those people because of that initial giving value. So just give value to 10s who are your dream clients, and then you'll get paid to work with 8s. Does that make sense?
Yep. Another gold nugget there.
Yeah, I'm really keen to hear Jason's thoughts on what Paul's saying there, because I know you're working in a slightly different capacity, but what's coming up for you hearing this?
Yeah, it's interesting. So always thinking about doing a podcast as well. Personally, I do feel that for us, one of the directions we were doing, and we get quite a lot of success, was doing videos, very short videos. So we teach leadership and we teach how to lead people better. And one of the things that people really enjoy is reaction videos. For some strange reason, all the social media helps people to really get accustomed to this idea of reaction videos. So when we're doing reaction videos on ministers, on CEOs, on how they talk, and all these nuances that they have, even the frown on their face, these are all signals when it comes to leadership. So when we're able to do that, that was actually our way of podcasting. That's how we broadcast our message out. And we do it in a very live format where we see the video and then we break it down. So that's something I'm very comfortable with. Definitely podcast is something that we have in mind in the future.
Paul has mentioned automation quite a bit, and I will come back to you on that in a bit, Paul. Jason, in your world, is there scope for automation? Do you use automation in delivering your service to your customers?
Yeah, so for us, it's because we're dealing with a lot of human interaction. So customization or automation might be a little bit more difficult. So for us, it's very much face-to-face. We are planning to do very much a learning management system. Some of the people managers are able to go there first and get all the content they need, and then go into a coaching program with us. So that's in the works as well. So that's our way of automation. We do feel that automation would definitely help in terms of increasing that scope.
All right.
I think something to add to that around the automation side. Sometimes when it, like you say, that face-to-face, it feels like you can't automate things because everything needs to be so personalized. However, we found, because we're a done-for-you agency as well, so like our clients, right, we're not mass market of like, let's have thousands of people on our list and sell a course. It's like we'll work with 4 or 5 people really in depth. So little things like, for example, let's say you've got someone on your team who can handle customer wow. So they're just a customer wow person that you go, okay, great. I had a client the other day and it was like, wow, we're scaling rapidly. how do I keep control of the operations and stuff? I was like, well, that's not really my wheelhouse. I can give you some little support. However, this book would be great about that. So I went and bought a Prime membership for Amazon in the US as well, so I could get that book out to them really quickly. But then if you've got someone in your team with that, let's say you've got a quick Google form or something, and you just write name and book or whatever, and that automatically then pings that over to your customer wow person on the team, and they go and order that for you without you going, right, now I've got to go on Amazon, I've got to order it. So it's about removing that friction as much as possible for the owner, I think, to leverage that automation.
So you're thinking about automation there specifically in the context of creating wow experiences for your customer, and how do you make that as friction-free as possible?
Yeah, friction-free for me, mainly. I know that sounds a little bit selfish, but the more time that you free up as a leader, the more time you spend on strategic thinking time, and the less I work, the more money we make, which is backwards. But it's so true, right? The more you're in the weeds, like it just, and Jason, you probably found the same, right? Like when you're just like deep into the weeds, you haven't got time to come up for air and actually look at the big picture. So I'm always like, how can we reduce the amount of steps that I need to do on my side? So I just sign off or suggest the idea and then go, here's the outcome, go and run with it, rather than focusing on outcomes, not outputs. That's the thing with a lot of businesses, right? They're like, I need you to do this and this and this. I'm like, here's the outcome I want you to go and figure it out. And then record it as an SOP so someone else doesn't need to figure it out next time.
So one thing you both have in common is you've got teams, right?
Mm.
So how do you ensure, so let's say you've got different businesses, you've got processes, automation that helps remove friction at various points of that customer journey and your internal business process. How do you ensure that your staff, your employees, are delivering a 6-star experience, if that, or excellence, or whatever the label is that you use?
Go ahead, Jason.
Yeah. So I think for us, it's always about feedback, and sometimes that every now and then we will actually speak to the actual clients and ask them actually, how was it? How was the experience like? And a lot of times the feedback that we get, we have a minimum score that we want to have, and that's around 9 upon 10. So we want to be able to hit that all the time. And if we don't hit that, we ask questions, and very, very seeking questions like, hey, what can we change? What do we do? Or what is the experience like? So feedback is an important way that we try to cover that loop of how people are doing and how we can create that wow moments for the clients.
Is that a net promoter score then that you're asking for, or is it just like, is it how likely would you be to recommend us, or is it like how likely do you feel that we're fulfilling on the service?
Yeah, so much more of a not net promoter score, more in terms of what do you feel overall in terms of the service and how do we level up.
Interesting. Yeah, and our side, we look at the same kind of, so like, we also do it internally with the team. So I think when you take that step back from a leadership perspective, if you take that step back and be vulnerable with the team, I was speaking to someone yesterday and they're talking very much about vulnerability and actually saying to the team, knowing what you know about me, see, what do you see me doing or not doing that's holding me back? So when you say that to your team, or then say that to even your clients, if you've got that close relationship with your clients, not this, like there's a barrier between we're on the opposite sides of the table. Like if I said to some of my clients, what do you see me doing or not doing that's holding me back? They would tell me outright what that is. Now, if they say it's all rosy, great. But I'd rather them not say it's all rosy because I want to get things better, right? Competitiveness. I always want to make things better and better. So I think it's having that open relationship with your clients and say, listen, if you feel anything is off, and then rewarding them for that with their little like attaboys almost. I really appreciate you bringing that to my attention. That's valuable to me. And then as regards to team, I'm always looking at the team's language patterns. So the way the team's communicating with the clients. So you never say, I need this. It's always like, can you get me this? Rather than, and don't say me or I, say we. It's always we. Because it takes all the pressure off the ask. And then asking about, for example, deadlines and stuff like that. I was like, when would we have a deadline for that? Or what would the deadline be so we can keep the momentum going? Rather than, what's the deadline because I need to get this sorted, right? This is just a complete difference in the feel of how we're communicating. So that's something that we found has been really important, is then training the team in that language pattern and that culture of we, not I.
That's pretty nuanced and detailed. Where did that come from for you?
A few things. So I look very much at NLP and those kind of things. I've also got a very solid mentor that works behind the curtain. You wouldn't know who he is, but he guides you in the right direction and taught me very much about leadership and using those phrases, those words, those structures. And the more you realize all the stuff is in the detail, right? It's not in there because for example, the other day we've had this whole funnel process with a client, and I think we've done about 3.5 million since January. So like it's working great, and then someone else has gone and ripped the whole thing off. Tried to, right? It's the same ads, it's the same funnel, like literally note for note, and even the same target audience. So I was like, okay, and I was like, they won't get the same results though. I was like, because they can't see what's going on behind the curtain. It's the little nuances. It's the little follow-ups for each day of bringing people back into the process. It's the way that they're using the conversational language patterns in the emails and building that emotion and that trust with the community. It ain't the funnel. It ain't the ads. It's nothing like that. It's the little nuances. So once you realize they're so important, that's what helps everything grow.
I did just want to pick up on something you said earlier, Paul, about the attention on individual clients. And the thought that came to mind is from the point of view of, well, yeah, that's okay for you and you can do that because you just said that you only have 4 or 5 clients at a time that you go deep with. Well, what about somebody who's listening to the podcast and they've got 100 clients or 200 clients? How do you do that kind of thing at scale?
Leverage automation, like personalization at scale. So like how, for example, this company is like Thanks.io, mailbox power. So someone goes and makes a purchase, you can set up an automation with Zapier that automatically sends out, for example, you could send someone a cupcake on their birthday every year. And you could set that up, set it and forget it once. You can send them a birthday card. You can have someone, let's say, like we have a pipeline, we've set up pipelines for clients to understand like where is everyone at in the customer journey. And let's say someone's gone and submitted a retainer and they paid like $500, but they haven't gone and paid the $5,000 for the rest of it. So it's like, well, how do we bridge that gap between the two? Well, let's add some automation in there, but also personalization. So let's say there might be 10 people there every day that are in that step where they've gone from one and not to the other. Well, what if we sent a personal video message from the owner, which may take him, so let's say 30 seconds times 10, right? So that's 5 minutes. 5 minutes a day. If that closes 2 out of those 10 people, he spent 5 minutes to make 10 grand.
10 grand.
So it's about looking at the bigger the scale is, where do we put that personalization in to make the biggest leverage and impact? And if you're like, that's working really well, okay, great. Well, let's bring down the personalized video another layer to everyone who bought will have a personalized video from a customer success team. So as you scale out, you just bring down the pyramid essentially of where the personalization comes in. And then the top tier clients, hey, like let's say someone just spent $25,000 with you. Great, I'm going to send you on holiday. I'm going to give you a 2-night, listen, you've worked so hard to get to where you are. I'm going to give you a 2-night breakaway. We used to do this with the wedding singing. And I do that as a surprise. I know Jason was saying about the whole leave a few cards back. So like, listen, I wanted to say, so glad that you booked us for your wedding. Really excited. I just wanted to give you a special treat. And it cost me £99 to give them a 2-night breakaway in a country house. And what were they thinking of all the time? It didn't have my branding all over it. It wasn't logos, right? It was just, they're going into that hotel thinking, oh my God, our singer got us this. And they were so appreciative after the wedding and raved about us to everyone because we created that experience.
Yep.
You mentioned before we started recording, Paul, about curveballs. Well, you just thrown a curveball in there because our listeners are hearing you as the CEO of a marketing company that works with 7-8-figure businesses, and now you just dropped in that they used to be a wedding singer. I don't know about you, Rob, but I don't think we can let that go necessarily. And just to tell us a little bit about that, more interestingly, I guess from a 6-hour business perspective, is what did you learn there that you're applying now? What's that story?
Well, firstly, me and Jason are going to do karaoke this weekend. So that's going to be like we're going to sing a bit about on John and Kiki D. So I'm excited for that. But as regard the wedding singing, I was like, when you go into any market, you have to look at like what's missing, right? So for example, with the podcast, I looked at that and I was like, the onboarding experience wasn't there. and the professionalism on a lot of podcasts wasn't there. So I looked at that. As regards to wedding thing, people want to feel like they're at a rock concert, but not pay rock concert price. They can't afford to have Robbie Williams there or take that or whatever. However, if they can feel that level of personalization there, and also the professionalism, there was like no professionalism in the wedding industry when it was like, oh, the singer would turn up and they'd be like, yeah, I'm going to be here on this date. Like, no one would know what the hell was going on. So I was like, right, you're going to get invoices, you've got agreements, I'm going to create a wow experience all the way up to the wedding. So we even created this Dream Wedding Secrets box. So it was like, here's a guide to all the entertainment for your wedding. Here's a wedding stationery, like how to do your wedding stationery, how to do your wedding speeches. And we give them all this stuff, right? So it probably cost me £200 in total. But everyone else was charging £350 for a day. I was charging £2,000 for a day. So yes, it cost me more, but it cost me nothing. It actually made it so I could charge almost 10 times as much as everyone else, because we made our branding, our experience. We became almost like a wedding planner for him, like a wedding consultant, that they could just go, Paul, I remember one day before someone's wedding, they're like, I'm so nervous. I just want everything to be perfect. I want everything to be perfect. I got on that call with her for an hour the day before the wedding, and I was like, listen, I'm going to be honest with you, it's not going to be perfect. Nothing is perfect, because you can't strive for perfection, because it's never achievable. So enjoy the day, enjoy every moment. It's going to go past so fast. And we broke through all her limiting beliefs. I went into life coaching mode, break through all limiting beliefs, and she was like, her husband came up to me on the day and he was like, I can't thank you enough for what you did yesterday, because she was stressed out. And I won't use the exact words I used, but stressed out a lot. And like, yeah, it changed the whole wedding because of that. Now, was that anything to do with my singing? No. But had I created that 6-star experience before? Yeah. And I probably took that for granted that I did those kind of things, but no one else was doing it. So I think that's the kind of things that I then took and applied to everything that we do now.
Yeah. I'd love to dig more into that, but I also want to ask Jason, what do you see in your background and your story that you've brought to where you are now? I mean, the correlation with Paul is clear. What about yourself?
Yeah, so interesting thing in the last 20 over years, I think I've done 32 different businesses.
Wow.
So I have serial entrepreneur to a point where most of them hit the wall. So basically for me, when I look back at my life and I see the things that I succeed very naturally, so I've done like a logo design. So I learned from scratch. I love logos. I learned it, and then I decided, hey, actually, I need to know where do I stand in it? So I also have a little bit of a competitive streak, Paul. So it's really about, so where do I benchmark myself? So I entered a logo competition worldwide, 148 entries. I won first prize. Then I went on to do a lot of different logo designs. I've done finance. I've won awards for that. And one thing I realized in all these things when it comes to 6-star and excellence, really world-class excellence, is that we are all built for different things. Every single one of us is built for different things, even though we all look human, but we're just built for really different things, and it's really minute. So give you an example is that when I look at all the businesses I failed, I understand I was looking and working towards things that it doesn't come naturally to me, right? But when I look at the businesses and things that I've done that really succeeded and almost accidentally succeeded, was the things that I really felt passionate in. That when it comes to this idea of energy level, is it draining for you when you think about these things, or is it energizing? It is energizing. So every time we hit, or we're trying to push that envelope of world-class standard, we're always wanting to understand from our team or from people, what is it that really makes you tick? What is it that naturally you do better? You have an unfair advantage over everybody else. And those are the things that when you put them together as ingredients, you have almost your success recipe. And I like to give this analogy. If you think about it, these three animals, an eagle, an ostrich, and a penguin, right? These three animals they're birds, right? But if I ask an eagle to run, can he do it? He can do it, but it's going to be really draining. He doesn't have dominance on that. So when we look at these three things, they have three different dominance. One is air, one is land, and one is sea. So what we need to do as leaders, or even as business partners, and even in your own teams, to figure natural dominance that each person has. And you will see it in their eyes. You see it in their initiative, in the innovation, in the effort that they put in. So what we want to do is that we want to treat people in a way that, hey, actually, very similar to this analogy of birds. The eagle must fly, the ostrich must run, and the penguin must swim. And when we are able to do that, we can see that we are tapping on the strengths that they have to hit world-class standard. Because if you ask anyone in your team about design, you will find that there are some people who give you, if you ask them, hey, this brochure, how's it? You'll see that some people will give you 10 insights. Hey, I think this changed, this font doesn't work with that font, that color palette doesn't work. But you will see within your team that there are some people who will give you only one insight. Both are very hardworking. Both are very high levels of responsibility. One has a lot more innovation and insight. Why? It comes down to we are built differently. The strengths that we have are the ones that we want to be able to almost leverage to be able to bring the experience in your team up. So when it comes to 6-star, we always want to look at individual people, and they're all gifted in different things. Our role as leaders is how do we position them in such a way that the eagle is flying, not running, even though the eagle can run, but it takes a lot more time and effort. It doesn't come naturally. And the one more last thing, we may think that this is very natural. It's almost like if I'm a bear, I talk to a fish, and hey, fish, you swim very well. The fish would be like, what are you talking about, bear? This is natural. It's normal for me. Every day I do that. That's the thing. As leaders and as consultants, we need to call it out. And a lot of times they don't know that because it's there, but they don't see it. So one of them could be, hey, you're really very eloquent. You don't know that, but I think you're extremely eloquent and your tonality is there. So one person in my team, I shared that, then she told me nobody in her entire life told her that. But I say that's going to be the success that you have. So one thing that's interesting is that even though we know this notion of strengths, that we can use strengths and leverage it to hit that world-class standard, people don't call it off enough, don't call it out enough to a point where people don't understand, people don't know that they have that strength. Yeah.
I say call it out to other people or call it out for themselves.
So the culture that we want to be able to build, not in my team, but also when I coach people, is that what gets celebrated gets perpetuated. When you celebrate something in somebody, that person will carry on doing it with a lot more effort. So it's the idea of celebrating the strengths that people have, the very natural things that they have. And that you will, in my life, when I look back at the 32 different things, I will reach success a lot easier and almost accidentally compared to putting in effort and a lot of effort in things that doesn't really come naturally to me.
I know that you use a particular tool for that, Jason. Do you just want to share what that is so listeners can perhaps dig into it a little bit?
Yeah, so one of the tools that we use is by Gallup, and their research company. It's called Clifton Strengths. So I've been exposed to Clifton Strengths for over 14 years. So passionate in the whole of Southeast Asia. I'm actually the first certified coach. And I use this as the fundamentals of how we can help leaders and teams understand what is their unique strengths. And I've seen so much positive things. So for example, one of them is that they hated each other. 2 team members hated each other. We did a workshop for them. 4 years later, she called me up and says, hey, Jason, I didn't tell you, but you know what? Remember the person that you asked us to stand up and then you told us that we are so different, but you gave language to it? We are now best friends. Guys, enemies becoming best friends. It is a one-off thing. I don't get that all the time. But the idea is that when you see the strengths in other people, you understand where that thought comes from. Why do they question so much, or why do they don't question so much? Why are they so quiet in a meeting, and why are some people not? So when we see that, when we use that tool, it opens up a whole paradigm of understanding human beings. Instead of just looking at everybody as birds, that's an eagle, that's an ostrich, that's a penguin.
Paul, I saw when Jason mentioned Clifton Strengths, I saw you respond. Is that something you're familiar with?
Yeah, I did that, and both me and my wife did that about 2 or 3 years ago, and I could do with redoing it just to actually see if it's changed. But I know my top 5, from what I can remember, is futuristic is number 1. So, which helps when you're in conversational commerce and thinking about automation and technology. Then strategic, responsibility, I think was one of them. Activator. So getting stuff done, and then they were on communication. So like I was like, that book and when that test gave me the confidence internally to go, wow, I am in the right place, like to be an entrepreneurial leader, because I was like, wow, I've got all the strengths to be a leader. Because I don't know about you, Jason, but I spent a lot of time like almost looking at myself going, I'm this dominant. I felt like I was a dominant and very direct with people because I was surrounded by people who weren't direct. And now I'm the opposite of, like, if I'm around people who are not direct, I'm like, just get to the point. Right? Because you start to, over time, you become more comfortable with who you are and the kind of person you are, rather than trying to fit yourself to please everyone else. And I think the Strength Finder really helps with putting you in touch with that and going, do you know what? These are strengths, not weaknesses.
Yeah, exactly. So Paul, when you talk about that, it sounds like your activator taking action, right? Let's cut out the smoke. Let's go straight into the target, right? So it's really about that idea, and that activator in you caused you to make a lot of decisions for other people, right? And but the funny thing is, not everybody has that. So sometimes people really take time. So for yours is ready, fire, aim, and for other people it's ready, aim, fire.
Yeah. And tying that in with the Myers-Briggs personality test is also really helpful as well. And we do this sometimes with our clients to find out when we onboard and what kind of personality type they are, because that makes it so much easier to communicate in the way that works for them. So I work really well with people who are more laissez-faire, like a little bit more casual. Like, Paul, just tell us what we need to do, like, because if you've got another dominant person on the other side, right, and then you end up with this push-pull, and I can step back now. I couldn't before. I can step back now and get that balance between the two of us. But I think it's really important to have things like, what Myers-Briggs personality type are you, when you're onboarding a client, especially if you're going to go that deep with them, because it's like someone's bringing a new member of the team on.
Yeah.
It's interesting you mentioned about that onboarding a client, Paul, because I have thought about giving new clients in my other business, Clifton Strengths, the gift, the way I see it, the gift of a Clifton Strengths assessment, not only for them, but for me. So I know what their strengths are as I'm working with them and communicating with them. But how do you position that? How do you set that up? Because I don't want my client to think that I am assessing them, but do you know what I mean?
So it's always phrasing around effectiveness. So I use, in order to serve you as effectively as possible and at the highest level, please complete this personality test. Well, and we don't say personality test because that puts people on edge, but please complete this document, and then you just put a link to it, and that will give us the opportunity to serve you at the highest level. So it's all always focus on them, not you, right? It's nothing to do with what you need from them. It's like, I want to help you as much as possible, and I use that all the time when you get push-pull, especially when you start a new relationship, right? And when you're working with 7-8 figure businesses, they've got a lot of systems and processes and ways of doing things, and they're like, what? Like, I had a client say, "Oh yeah, we don't use Slack." I was like, I want to help you be as effective as possible, and we both want to get that momentum, right? So we get buy-in from both sides. We both want to get that momentum, move forward, get this launched as fast as possible. Now, the most effective way we found to do that right now is using Slack. Would you be against using that if you knew it was the most effective way to do things? Okay, cool. Yeah, we'll sign up. Right. Next day, I had 10 people in that channel.
Yeah. There's the against question as well. Would you be against?
Yeah.
That's that's another takeaway. Listener, hear it.
I can't claim that one, by the way. That's from Chris Voss. Chris Voss, Never Split the Difference. Read that book. Beautiful book on negotiation, and you negotiate in every step of your life, not just...
Great attribution. Yeah. Thank you.
All good.
Yeah, beautiful.
I know what you're looking at, Av, unfortunately.
Yeah, I want to keep talking. I just want to sort of close out all those the last sort of 10 minutes, or 15, I don't know, time just goes so quick. In terms of the strengths aspect, and Jason, what you're talking about around understanding what type of bird someone is, or who they really are, would you say that the businesses you help to, the business people or the people that you coach and work with, is that a necessary ingredient for them for that business to be able to be 6-star, or for them to be able to be 6-star? Is this an ingredient? Would you say this is necessary for 6-star excellence?
Right. So when it comes to working with people, it's an algorithm, right? When we work with machines and logic and all, that's an algorithm that we understand. But when it comes to working with people, it's also an algorithm. It's almost like Jarvis in Iron Man. It's so complex to a point where you probably have to ask them 1,000 questions to understand that. So it's going to be difficult. So one thing that you need to do is to find a way that you can understand how to break down that algorithm. And one of the best ways is a personality tool or test. For me, a strengths goes a lot deeper than DISC and MBTI. It goes deeper, and so that's useful. So the bottom line when it comes to 6-star, I would say that you know that the people are your assets, but how do you understand them? You need to find a way. So one way that I found most efficient is going through an online assessment.
Yep. Yeah, beautiful.
Great. Good summary. The more we know about ourselves, the more, as you say, Paul, the more effective we're gonna be with them. And there are some great tools out there. I've got experience of Clifton Strengths, and I know Av uses DISC, and it's not necessarily one or the other, but you use the tools that are out there to increase your understanding and awareness of the people that you're engaging with and communicating with. Paul, I know you've got a hard stop in a couple of minutes, so we'll use this as an opportunity to wrap up. Again, lovely, meandering, beautiful, insightful conversation. Wish it could go on a longer. So just ask the question, Paul and Jason, would you be against getting on a one-to-one call with Av and me sort of outside of the podcast just to connect and have a conversation?
Sure. Yes,
No, I won't. It'll be good.
Great.
Lovely. Well, thank you so much. And we look forward to that conversation. Have a great day, morning, evening, wherever you are.
Fantastic.
All right. Take care, guys.
See you, gents.
Bye-bye.
That was another stimulating, thought-provoking episode of the 6-Star Business Podcast.
Thank you so much for getting this far. Please go ahead, like, subscribe, and give us a comment, review.
A rating, if there was a 6-star, we'd love you to give us a 6-star rating, but so just go as high as you can.
And if you want to continue the conversation with us and all the cool people who've joined us from the podcast, head on over to apply.6starbusiness.community.
See you there.